Good morning. Morning. So as I mentioned earlier, our theme for the whole year is the spirituality in action. And all of October, we've been talking about cherishing the human family and this value of unity. And so today we're talking about seeing others as one. And I was, this really came forward for me this morning when I got that email from our sister community around the fires, that when we shine when it comes to cherishing the human family when crisis happens often, right? And we can come together and create all those resources and bring support and that prayer that's so important for us. And so we do continue our prayers for them, and to know that that's such a powerful example of how we can come together in cherishing not only the human family, but life itself and our earth as well. And so Dr. Ernest Holmes said, everything that lives proclaims the glory of God. Every person who exists manifests the life of God. There is one spirit in which we live, one mind by which we think, one body of which we are a part, and one light that lighteth every person's pathways. He said that at the Sermon by the Sea, which was his last talk that he gave at Asilomar in 1959, August 1959. And that, that's that premise that we're talking about, that there's this one energy, one power, this one presence that moves through all things, and that we all share it. We all share that energy and that connection. And in the book that we've been reading this month called The Principle of Oneness by Russell Anthony Gibbs, he talks about that from a very scientific place, from the aspect of quantum physics. He says, according to quantum physics, everything on a subatomic level is the physical and non-physical universe is part of one infinite field of energy, of matter, swirling, moving, vibrating at various speeds. And on the subatomic level, it is not possible to determine where anything begins or ends, because there's no true separation of individual energy, despite appearances. Nothing exists outside of this field of energy and matter. The essence of our oneness is our connection to this infinite field of energy and matter. And this is what we call this field of energy. We call the divine. We call God, source, love, divine energy. And so we quite literally, we are everything and everyone. At the subatomic level, there's no separation between you and the chair you're sitting on, or the people sitting around you. There's no you and them. There simply is this oneness, this energy that's vibrating at different speeds. And so it's so powerful us to expand this idea of that we are a part of this broader self, that we can expand the facets of ourself to understand that we are one, and that we're in this relationship with this divine presence that shows up in our world as other people. And Harry Palmer said that when you adopt the viewpoint that there is nothing that exists that is not a part of you, that there is no one who exists who is not a part of you, that any judgment you make is self-judgment, that any criticism you level is self-criticism, you will extend to yourself an unconditional love that will be the light of the world. So this this comes back to what we always talk about, that the first part of our practice is the understanding the divine presence within, and that that inherent goodness is within ourselves. And if we can't get to that place, we're not able to love others. And Alan Watts said, so then the relationship of self to other is the complete realization that loving yourself is impossible without loving everything defined as other than you. So it's this cycle. Loving yourself allows yourself to love others. And I was thinking about this idea of how it's impossible to love others when we don't love ourselves. And because we're all connected, I was thinking about our bodies. All of us probably had this experience where there's something about our physical appearance or our character that we just don't love. Yeah, and I was thinking about when I was a girl, I towered over everybody. I was skinny and lanky and awkward, and there was 2 boys in the whole school that were taller than me, and one of them was my brother, you know. and so there was, I was like, I hated that about myself. And so how could I actually truly love myself if there was something that I was actively loathing about myself? It's the same way with other people. If there's something about, an aspect of the one that shows up as the other, then there's no way that we can actually truly love unconditionally and completely the all of it. We can ourselves or others. And so this idea that we must love ourselves first and then love others, of course, it shows up in all religions through the golden rule. If you look at any religion, and the major religions, all of them, they talk about this golden rule of loving our neighbors as ourselves. Do unto others as you would like done unto you. So we all know that that's important, but you have to really think about that. If you're not loving yourself, how can you then, so if that's your saying, love others as you love yourself, how are we going to treat others? How are we going to treat others if we aren't even in a place to love ourselves enough to expect and to desire and to know that we deserve good in our lives? And so this process of loving others includes loving ourselves, and it includes, sometimes that takes work, right? To be able to look past the expressions that people show up into our lives. We always say that, it's God expressing as a jerk, God is expressing as a bad driver, and so we have to see past that jerkness, to see the divine within. There's this great story. I first heard it, I read it in A Different Drum by Scott Peck many years ago, and you've probably heard some version of it. It's called The Rabbi's Gift. But it's a very wonderful illustration about this idea of loving ourselves and loving others to be able to transform our lives. And so there was this great monastic order that was in this beautiful forest, and at one time it was really flourishing. There was lots of people there. They had lots of monks, but over the years people kind of started drifting away, and monks weren't coming, and so it came down to about 5 older monks. And they were really getting to this place where they knew that they weren't going to be able to take care of the grounds as well, and they were getting older, and they were really sad about this, and they didn't know quite what to do. And they knew that there was this hermitage nearby where a rabbi would come, usually on a yearly basis, take a retreat there. And they always knew when he was there because they could see the smoke from the chimney, and they just kind of had a sense that he was there. And so the abbot decided to go see him when he was there one time, and he went in, and the rabbi greeted him, and they started talking, and this abbot, shared the challenges that they were having and how sad he was, and he didn't know how to grow the monastery at all. And the rabbi was very sympathetic, and they just talked and visited. And at the end, the rabbi says, I don't know how to solve your problem, but I just have one thought for you to take home with you, and that is that the Messiah lives among you. And the abbot, went back, and the other monks came over and said, "What did he say? What did he say?" And he said, "Well, he didn't give me any answers. He doesn't know what we're going to do. He said this kind of odd thing. He said that the Messiah lives among us." And the other monks said, "Huh." And so over the next few days and months, they started thinking about this. Well, could that be true? Could the Messiah live among us? And they started looking at each other, which one of us is the Messiah? And they said, well, it's probably the abbot, because, he's wise and he cares for us. He's probably the abbot. Surely it's not Brother Elred, because he's grumpy all the time. But, when I think of him, I think he's usually right. Even though he's grumpy, he's got some wisdom. It's probably not Brother Samuel, because he's so meek and mild and kind of quiet. But come to think of it, he's always there when you need him. He always shows up. Could it be me? Could I be the Messiah? No, I'm not. I'm just an ordinary person. I just can't be the Messiah. And so they kept looking for the Messiah, and they started finding these qualities within these people. And because they lived in this beautiful forest and the monastery still had beautiful gardens, people would still come from time to time and bring picnics, and the people started noticing that there was this energy that changed. And so they started coming more often, and they started bringing friends and families, and then pretty soon young men started to get curious and wanting to know more about this order, and eventually the monastery grew and became healthy and vital again because of this idea of looking for this Messiah, looking for the divine, looking for the energy of that truth that moves through all things. And so this is this idea, right, of cherishing this divine expression in everyone and being able to look and really look. We do that every Sunday, right? When we say, I am love, and then we look at each other, we say, you are love, you are love. What if we did that? In the car, the person next to us. One of my assistant, my teaching assistant in my prac class was sharing with me this week that I had asked her to do some prayer work for me, and she was driving in her car, and she was speaking out loud, and I guess she was really speaking with intention, and she said the lady in front of her was looking at her angrily, and she started waving a certain finger at her, and she's like, is she talking to me? Am I, She was praying so fervently that somehow she thinks that the lady in front of her thought she was cussing her out or something. And so in that moment, like, you are God. You are an expression of God. And so this idea that we, sometimes these stories pop in my head, but anyway. So Dr. Holmes said, to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves means to see God in everything and to include everyone in one divine unity. On this admonition of the Master hangs the meaning of all divine law, all spiritual prophecy, and all true revelation. To love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves means we see God in everything. So this idea that we see God in everything, though, doesn't mean that we're all the same. Right? Unity doesn't mean uniformity. Oftentimes in our teaching, we kind of bypass the looking at diversity or different expressions or how people experience the world by just saying, "Oh, we're all one." Oh yeah, no, I don't see those differences because we're all one. Well, that's what we teach. We're all one. And I would say, yes, and we teach that one shows up in diversity, shows up in differences, shows up in different expressions. So Dr. Holmes said, while we have one common source, divine wisdom as seen fit to make each an individual, unity does not mean uniformity. There is unity at the center with infinite variation at the circumference. I just love that idea that at the center there's this unity, this divine essence, and yet it expresses out into the world in unique and different and divine ways. And we know this is true. We have multiple cultures that we are all part of. They're ethnic cultures, our career, our age culture, our socioeconomic status, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, religious culture, political culture, sports culture. Go Nats, right? and beliefs, and each one of these cultures has its own beliefs, its own set of ideas and thoughts and expressions and experiences in life. And so part of this idea of cherishing the human family and recognizing that one and all is to also be able to see the uniqueness, the divine diversity that shows up, and to honor that, to honor other people's personal experiences and how they show up. So the golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But there's another rule that transcends that, known as the platinum rule, right? And that is, treat others the way they want to be treated. If we don't do that, we're like the little couple that had been married for 60 years, and every time they had a loaf of bread, the husband would cut off the ends and give the heels to his wife. And after doing this for 60 years, she just finally blew up. And she said, I just can't believe how you do that. You give me the worst part of the bread every single time. You're so selfish. And he looked at her in surprise. He said, the heel is my favorite part. All these years, he had been giving her what he wanted without giving her what it was that she wanted. And that's what we can do in our life when we get so caught up on thinking we know what other. I think, does this hit you guys personally? You gotta look at each other like, there's a story there. So this platinum rule, takes a little more sophistication, a little bit more level of compassion, a little bit more willingness to look and to see and to ask and to communicate. And this is all part of this cherishing the human family, is that honoring that diversity and that the differences. I've been listening to William Ury, who's a peace negotiator and a mediator. And he was actually the inspiration of the Abraham path. I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but the Abraham path is, he realized that Abraham walked on certain soil, certain ground, in Israel and Palestine, and that Abraham, of course, is the father of Christianity, of Judaism, and Islam. So there's this connection, this Abraham path. And so he began to bring leaders and people from these different faiths to walk the path that Abraham walked in a sense of unity. And he's done this, he's done some really beautiful work in some really challenging places that are in conflict. And he was sharing about how important it is to be able to expand our awareness and to recognize differences and to become expose ourselves to other cultures and other experiences. And he said there was a moment, a few years ago, the border between North Korea and South Korea is like one of the most militarized zones in the world. There's 1 million soldiers on each side, pointing lots of, weapons at each other. And he said there was a time period when South Korea hosted the Olympics a few years ago, where there was a shift in energy, that there was this connection and a widening perspective, and that there were some peace talks that began at that time. There was a potential for peace talks at that time, because there was this common experience and this opportunity to understand different cultures and an ability to see that area in a more expanded way. And so this idea of being able to allow ourselves to be open to listening, to hearing, to understanding, to widen the circle. William, I talk a lot about that, right? About our perspective, moving our perspective. He calls it going to the balcony. To go to the balcony and to be able to look down and see a wider perspective, from third person's perspective. And some of our great teachers talk about going to the upper room. From a spiritual place, going to the upper room to pray, to be able to see that higher perspective, that deeper perspective. And William Ury was telling, he has a book called The Third Side, which is not your side, my side. There's a third side, that perspective. And he was talking about how the calamari bush people handle conflict. And these are small tribes. There's small groups and they don't have a lot of violence within their communities. And the reason why is because they have this whole process that involves the whole community. And they said that first thing they do if there's a conflict and it looks serious is all the other people go and hide the poison-tipped arrows. They carry these poison-tipped arrows to defend themselves and to hunt. So they go gather up all the weapons and hide them, from the people that have conflict. Which, that should be the first rule, right, for everything, to have that commitment that we're going to resolve this in a nonviolent way and a non-forceful way. And then they bring all the community together, and they all talk. They all listen and they talk, and they will talk and talk and talk and talk and talk until some resolution comes. And the thing that I love about it is that if it goes into days and they go home to go to sleep, and during their sleep time, they call to the gods to bring wisdom and clarity and understanding. So you see all of this, right? You see this commitment to a nonviolent process. You see the cherishing of this community, the coming together to realize that it's not an either or, it's an all. And they create their own balcony, right, of just holding the people there that are in conflict. And then they also connect with their divine wisdom, the divine source, to help guide them and direct them. And usually it's the elders that come together and they kind of find a resolution. And he was telling about how this mediation process has started going into the schools, and they're actually training peer mediators with students, and so that they have a place that students, whenever they have conflict, they have a place that they can go and communicate. And what's so beautiful about that is, again, it starts with the individual, because these student mediators that have learned how to mediate take that into their families. And one girl said, she goes, yeah, before I was trained as a mediator, before I started doing this, when my mom would come into my room and start telling me stuff, I'd, start yelling and getting mad at her. And she goes, I've learned how to listen now. So I listen to her. And when I listen and I'm not loud, she listens. To this cycle of expanding. And so realizing that those skills that start can expand and grow, and pretty soon, communities and countries and the world can learn how to have this third perspective, the knowing that there is a process that can bring resolution. William Ury says he's not an optimist or a pessimist, he's a possibilitist. And I think that's what we are, right? In our movement, I think that really describes us, because we don't think we have the greatest answer. We don't skip over or gloss over what's happening in the world, but we know that there is a possibility, that there is a divine essence that in any moment can create an answer. Just like Marion was saying, and when I was talking about that when we are in that moment of possibility, that we know that there's an abundance in the universe, and then it shows up in some way that we may not have had any thought of happening. That's what we do. That's the gift that we have. And we have it, we understand it, because we have this foundational base of this divine energy, this presence that moves through all things, that moves through us. And so this week, as you go about your experience and you think about this cherishing the human family and how it is that we can utilize these divine truths, I ask you to continue to remember that divine essence within you, that perfection within you, that you cannot love others until there is a love within you. And then practice that. You are God. You are God. You are love. You are a divine presence. And then somewhere in your life, where can you go to the balcony? Where can you go to the balcony? It may be listening to the talking heads on TV. It may be with a spouse or a child or a coworker. Maybe it's driving down the street. Someplace in your life this week, you can go to the balcony, go to that upper room, know the divine truth, cherish that divine truth that shows up in our world. Let's do that now with our own prayer. Go to that upper room. So just close your eyes with me if you choose. Just feel into this truth, that this divine essence that moves through all things is within me in this very moment. You remember last week we talked about breathing in and out, that our pores, our very skin breathes in and out. And so in this moment, just practice that, breathing in and out, that divine essence, that it moves, literally is moving through us at this very moment, expressing as us. Just settle into that heart space, feel that moving in and out, and let us just sit in the awareness of the divine, just for a moment, together in silence, breathing in that divine presence. And now just notice. Just notice a shift, an expanded awareness. Maybe it's a sense of relief. Oh yes, I am the divine presence. And now just knowing that we have this creative energy that's moving in and through us, and through our thoughts, through our intentions, we are co-creators with it. Choose in this moment. What is the quality that you experience and that you choose to give out to the world, to look at another and say, you are that quality. You are love, you are peace, you are wholeness, you are joy, you are health, you are abundance. And in this moment, expand that awareness to each person in this room. This quality of the divine that you are choosing now to be a creative, co-creative partner with. And allow that energy to move out of this room and find a spot where you live or where you work or your family, your coworkers, and bless this quality on them. This energetic understanding of the divine moving across this town, this state. Let us move to our nation's capital. And in this moment, think of every single legislator, every single lawmaker, every single person in elected office. You are this quality of God. And that quality guides and directs your every action. All of those in service, the employees, the governmental employees that are working to bring forth this magnificent country of ours. Let us expand to our country, and once again, we know that quality of the divine is blessing all those being affected by the fires in Northern California and any other challenge that's in our world, in our country and beyond. So let's expand to our world, and then just allow yourself to expand your whole essence out into that universal presence. We are an expanded awareness of this divine. And as we leave our impression, our creative power out in the world, we just breathe back our individual expression into this room. Breathing into the heart, and down through the feet, back in this room. Just place your hand over your heart. Acknowledge that divine presence that is within you now. And it's from this place that I do claim that presence and that power that moves through all things, moves through me and moves through each person here. That I know that we do good work together, that we cherish the human family, we cherish our earth, we cherish all life and non-life, because it's all an expression of God. And that we each have some way this week to express that unity, that oneness, to honor the diversity, to move to the balcony, to see a higher